There is a moment, and every producer knows it, when you are sitting in a darkened theater on opening night, watching 1,000 people experience something extraordinary for the first time, and you think back to where it all began. Maybe it was a script that arrived in a manila envelope. Maybe it was a conversation over coffee with a writer who had an idea that would not leave them alone. Maybe it was a song you heard in a workshop that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And between that first spark and this opening night, years, sometimes a decade. Workshops and readings and rewrites and arguments and breakthroughs and heartbreaks and technical miracles and moments of pure creative alchemy that no one in the audience will ever see. I am Gilad, and this is Curtain Call Conversations. Today we are pulling back the curtain on the curtain itself. We are going behind the scenes of behind the scenes. Because most audiences experience a Broadway show as a seamless, polished production, 2.5 hours of magic that appears to have sprung fully formed from the imagination of its creators. They never see the 5 to 10 years of development, the countless workshops, the creative battles fought and resolved at 3 a.m, the sleepless nights, the logistical miracles that precede opening night. In this episode, I am going to take you inside the complete journey of bringing a show to Broadway. From the first time a producer reads a script, through development workshops, out-of-town tryouts, assembling creative teams, navigating technical rehearsals, and the electric intensity of the preview period. I will draw on specific examples from productions I have been part of, The Outsiders, which I produced, and Moulin Rouge the musical, and Buena Vista Social Club, which I co-produced, to show you how shows evolve, how creative teams solve seemingly impossible problems, and why the process itself is as extraordinary as the final product. Because here is what I have learned after more than 2 decades in this business. The journey from page to stage is not a straight line. It is a labyrinth. And navigating that labyrinth, with all its dead ends and sudden breakthroughs, is one of the most exhilarating experiences in the creative world. Every Broadway show begins with a question that only a producer can answer. Does this belong on a stage? Not every great story is a great stage story. Not every beloved film translates. Not every novel has the theatrical DNA to fill a 1,200-seat house 8 times a week. The producer's first job, before the budgets, before the investors, before the creative team is assembled, is to recognize potential, to read a script or hear a pitch and feel that unmistakable electricity that says, "This could be something." Now, what does that electricity feel like? It is different every time. Sometimes it is intellectual. You see the architecture of a story, and you understand how it could work in 3 dimensions, with live bodies and live music and a live audience breathing together. Sometimes it is purely emotional. A script makes you weep or laugh so hard you cannot breathe, and you think, if this does this to me alone in my living room, imagine what it will do to 1,000 people experiencing it together. The average Broadway musical takes 5 to 10 years from first concept to opening night. Some take longer. That means when a producer says yes to a project, they are making a commitment that will define the next chapter of their professional life. You are not just investing money. You are investing time, reputation, relationships, and an enormous amount of creative energy. Let me give you 3 very different examples of how material finds its way to a producer. The Outsiders began with one of the most beloved novels in American literature. S.E. Hinton wrote it when she was 15 years old. A teenager writing about teenagers with a raw, unfiltered honesty that has resonated with every generation since 1967. The book has sold more than 15 million copies. There was a beloved 1983 Francis Ford Coppola film. So the question was never whether The Outsiders was a great story. The question was whether it could become a great musical. And that question required a very specific creative vision. Director Danya Taimur, who would go on to helm the production, described her approach this way. She wanted to see the story through the eyes of her 14-year-old self. She wanted to make something that her 14-year-old self would be moved by and think was real and authentic. That is a deceptively simple statement, but it contains a profound creative principle. The idea that the adaptation must honor not just the plot of the source material, but its emotional truth. And in the case of The Outsiders, that emotional truth is rawness, vulnerability, the feeling of being young and afraid and desperate to belong. The book writer Adam Rapp and music supervisor Justin Levine, along with the band Jamestown Revival, Jonathan Clay and Zach Chance, brought a sound to the project that was unlike anything else on Broadway. Not traditional musical theater, not pop. Something that felt like the story itself, gritty, beautiful, and achingly young. Moulin Rouge, the musical, which I co-produced, began with a different kind of question. Baz Luhrmann's 2001 film is one of the most visually distinctive movies ever made. It is operatic, excessive, heartbreaking, and utterly unique. So the question was not just, can this be a stage show, but can this be a stage show that is not simply a replica of the film? Director Alex Timbers articulated this perfectly. He said, and I quote, "Creating a replica of a movie on stage is not the path to making something that feels essential and necessary. That is the key word, necessary. A Broadway adaptation must justify its own existence. It must offer something that the film cannot. And what the stage offers that film never can is liveness, presence, the feeling of being inside the story rather than watching it from outside." Baz Luhrmann himself understood this. He said he chose Alex Timbers because his aesthetic was almost like a cousin of mine, rhythmic and dynamic in the telling, a deep humanity set inside an ironic glove. That phrase, a deep humanity set inside an ironic glove, tells you everything about what makes Moulin Rouge work on stage. It is spectacular and excessive, yes, but underneath all the spectacle is genuine human emotion, love, loss, sacrifice. And that combination is what makes it theatrical. And then there is Buena Vista Social Club, which I also co-produced, and which represents yet another path to the stage. This show was born not from a novel or a film, but from music itself. The 1997 album, that Grammy-winning collection of Afro-Cuban songs performed by legendary musicians who had been forgotten for decades, is one of those rare recordings that transcends language and culture. It moves you whether or not you understand a single word of Spanish. Book writer Marco Ramirez grew up in a large Cuban family in Miami. He described listening to those old cassette tapes his grandfather played, copies of copies of copies that made the music sound tinny and distant. And then the Buena Vista Social Club album came out, and for the first time he could hear the bass. He could feel it in his chest. He said, "I think the record did that for a lot of people around the world." Director Sahim Ali had a similar experience. Growing up in Kenya, listening to that album obsessively as a teenager, learning all the Spanish lyrics without knowing what any of them meant. He said, "There's the melodic structure, what the lyrics are expressing, and then the music underneath it all. I didn't know enough at the time to understand there was something about the combination of those elements that was doing something to me and people all over the globe. That is the spark. That is what a producer recognizes. a story, a sound, an emotional truth that has the power to reach across every boundary, language, culture, generation, and connect human beings to one another. Once a producer commits to a project, the real work begins. And that work happens in a series of stages that most audiences never know exist. Think of it as a laboratory, a place where ideas are tested, refined, discarded, and reinvented. The first stage is typically a reading. This is exactly what it sounds like. Actors sit around a table and read the script aloud. There is no staging, no costumes, no set, just words and voices. A reading costs relatively little to produce, a few $1,000s, but it reveals an enormous amount. You hear where the dialogue works and where it falls flat. You discover which characters come alive and which feel underdeveloped. You learn whether the story has momentum or whether it stalls. For a musical, a reading might include songs performed with simple piano accompaniment. And this is where you get your first glimpse of whether the score and the book are speaking the same language, whether the music elevates the story or sits awkwardly beside it. The next stage is the workshop. This is where things get serious. A workshop typically runs 6 to 10 weeks. Actors are off book, meaning they have memorized their lines. Choreography begins. Music is taught. The show starts to take physical shape. But here is what is crucial to understand about a workshop. Nothing is permanent. The book may be rewritten. Songs may be cut or replaced. Characters may be combined or eliminated. The entire second act might be restructured. A workshop is not a performance. It is an experiment. And the willingness to experiment, to try things that might fail, to throw away work that is not serving the story, that is what separates shows that eventually succeed from shows that never find their footing. At the end of a workshop, there is typically a presentation for potential investors. This is a pivotal moment. The creative team performs their work in progress for an audience of people who might put millions of dollars behind it. And those investors are making their own judgment. Does this have the potential to fill a Broadway house? Is this creative team capable of delivering on the promise of what I am seeing today? For the outsiders, the development process included something particularly innovative. Between the world premiere at La Jolla Playhouse and the Broadway opening, the creative team held additional workshops specifically focused on movement. Director Danya Taymor and choreographers Rick and Jeff Cooperman, the Cooperman brothers, had a 2-week movement workshop with the writers in the room. Now, why would you need a movement workshop with the writers present? Because in The Outsiders, movement is not decoration, it is storytelling. Danya made a decision early on that would define the entire production. She wanted movement language and violence language to be created by the same brain. There would be no separate fight choreographer. The Cooperman brothers would create both the dance and the violence, because in this story, they are inseparable. The bodies of the actors would be, as Danya put it, one of the main scenic elements of the show. Rick Cooperman described the collaboration this way: to know that your first instinct is aesthetically in line 99% of the time gives you a sense of freedom to make bold choices. And Danya added, I feel like we share a brain. It's nice to have 2 other people who you really trust and who you know are telling the same story. That kind of creative alignment does not happen by accident. It is built through years of development work, through workshops and experiments, and the slow, painstaking process of discovering a shared vocabulary. There is a grand tradition in Broadway history called the out-of-town tryout. Before a show risks the scrutiny of New York critics and the New York theatrical community, it opens in another city, historically Boston, Philadelphia, New Haven, or Washington, D.C. Today, regional theaters across the country serve this function. The purpose is simple but essential: to put the show in front of a real audience and learn what works and what does not. Because here's a truth that every theater maker knows: you cannot fully understand a show until an audience is watching it. The audience is the final collaborator. They tell you, through their laughter, their silence, their restlessness, their tears, whether you are communicating what you intend to communicate. The history of Broadway is filled with legendary out-of-town stories. Shows that were disasters on the road and became triumphs in New York. Shows that seemed perfect in tryouts and collapsed on Broadway. The tryout period is where the real creative battles are fought, where authors sit up all night rewriting scenes, where the cast rehearses new material in the morning, performs the old version at the matinee, and debuts the changes that evening. Ethel Merman, during the tryout of Call Me Madam in Boston, famously reached her breaking point with the constant revisions. She told the creative team, "Boys, as of right now, I am Miss Birdseye of 1950. I am frozen, not a comma." That story captures the tension of the tryout period perfectly. The creative team wants to keep refining, but at some point, the performers need stability to deliver their best work. The Outsiders had its world premiere at La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego in early 2023. La Jolla is one of the most prestigious development theaters in America. Shows like Jersey Boys, The Who's Tommy, and Big River all came through La Jolla on their way to Broadway. It is a place where audiences are sophisticated enough to appreciate work in progress and generous enough to forgive rough edges. The La Jolla production was, in many ways, a proof of concept. The creative team had been developing the show for more than 2 years at that point. They had worked out the movement vocabulary. They had tested the score. They had refined the book. But they had never put it in front of a paying audience in a full production. And here is what the La Jolla tryout proved: the show's most audacious creative choice, the climactic rumble scene, performed in actual rain, on a floor made of EPDM rubber that looks like dirt, with no music, only the sounds of fists and rain and a distant train, actually worked. The proof of concept was there. Jeff Cooperman described the preparation. "We tried different muds, we tried different bloods, different amounts of blood. We needed to make sure what we were doing was safe and repeatable 8 times a week. We did technical workshops where we went to the special effects studio and tried out different granules of cork, or EPDM, until we found the right one." That is the level of detail that goes into a single scene. Months of experimentation, visits to special effects studios, testing different materials, all so that when the audience experiences that 5-minute rumble, it feels visceral and real and dangerous, even though every moment has been choreographed to be completely safe. By the time they got to Broadway, as Jeff put it, "We weren't scared that it wasn't going to work. The proof of concept was there, and it was just about executing it at a high level." Moulin Rouge the musical had its pre-Broadway tryout at the Emerson Colonial Theater in Boston in July 2018. This was significant for multiple reasons. First, the Colonial Theater itself had been closed for years and was reopening specifically for this production. So the show was not just trying out, it was inaugurating a newly restored historic venue. Second, the demand was so strong that the Boston run was extended before it even opened. But what happened creatively between Boston and Broadway, that year of refinement, is where the show became what audiences eventually experienced. Director Alex Timbers and music supervisor Justin Levine had done something extraordinary during the development process. They had locked themselves in a hotel room and gone through the entire script, identifying every moment that could be dramatized with a pop song. They plotted out an original musical first, asking, "What is this song beat?" And then, as Timbers described it, blue-skied the entire pop catalog from the last century. The result was a jukebox score unlike any other. Not a greatest hits review, but a carefully constructed dramatic narrative told through more than 70 pop songs, many of them mashed together in ways that created entirely new emotional meanings. Timbers explained the technique. In a pop song, the chorus generally doesn't evolve from a storytelling and character perspective. But in theater, there would be a sameness and monotony to it. The mashup has been a real great tool to be able to ask, how do you keep leveling up? How do you keep sculpting the journey? Some of the boldest creative decisions happened during this period. They cut "One Day I'll Fly Away," one of the most beloved songs from the film, and replaced it with Katy Perry's "Firework" as Satine's "I Want" song. Why? Because, as Timbers explained, a musical theater protagonist needs as much agency as possible. The message of "One Day I'll Fly Away" suggested a princess waiting to be rescued. "Firework" suggested a woman ready to ignite. That is the kind of decision that can only be made through the development process, through testing, through audience response, through the slow realization that what works in a film does not always work on a stage. A Broadway musical is one of the most complex collaborative art forms in existence. The creative team alone can include more than a dozen key artists: director, choreographer, book writer, composer, lyricist, music director, set designer, lighting designer, costume designer, sound designer, projection designer, orchestrator, and more. And each of these artists leads their own team: assistants, associates, specialists. The producer's role in assembling this team is part matchmaker, part diplomat, part talent scout. You are not just finding the best individual artists, you are finding artists who will work well together, who share a creative vocabulary, who will challenge each other productively rather than destructively. John Kenrick, the theater historian, describes the first day of rehearsal this way. The cast meets at one of the major rehearsal studios in New York. The director introduces the creative team and shows off the designs for sets, costumes, and advertising. Everyone gushes optimistic approval. Then the cast sits down for a first read-through of the script. In some cases, the composers perform all or part of the score. That first day is electric. It is the moment when all the years of development, the readings, the workshops, the tryouts, finally converge into a single room full of people who are about to spend the next 8 to 10 weeks building something together. And the thing they are building does not yet exist. It exists only as potential, as a script, a score, a set of designs, and a shared vision. For Moulin Rouge, the creative team included some of the most accomplished artists working in theater. Set designer Derek McLean, a 2-time Tony Award winner, was tasked with something unprecedented: transforming the Al Hirschfeld Theater from a traditional Broadway house into a Parisian nightclub. Not just the stage, the entire theater. McLean took inspiration from actual Parisian clubs of the Belle Époque era, and from the artwork of Toulouse-Lautrec, who is, fittingly, also a character in the musical. He built railings out of plaster covered in gold leaf, with cherubs and windmills carved into them. He covered the walls in red velvet. He hung chandeliers and twinkling lights from the ceiling. He placed a gigantic replica of the iconic red windmill in a box to the left of the stage, where seats would normally be, with its panels actually turning. On the opposite side, a massive elephant head adorned with tassels. Nearly every inch of the theater was modified. The result was that the show began not when the lights went down, but when you walked through the door. 15 minutes before curtain, performers appeared on stage, dancing, interacting with each other, checking out the audience. The theater felt like a nightclub where patrons and performers were actively mixing and mingling. Alex Timbers said of the technical process, "I love the technical process because it's when all of the designers and actors are there. You're all making the show together." That word, together, is the key. A Broadway musical is not the product of a single genius. It is the product of dozens of geniuses working in concert. For Buena Vista Social Club, the creative team faced a challenge that was in some ways the opposite of Moulin Rouge. Where Moulin Rouge needed to be visually overwhelming, a sensory explosion, Buena Vista needed to let the music breathe. The music was the star. Everything else had to serve it. Book writer Marco Ramirez established what he called Rule 1 on day 1: no translating any of the songs into English. The original Spanish lyrics would remain intact. Director Sahim Ali agreed, as he put it, 1,000%. But this created an extraordinary storytelling challenge. In most musicals, songs advance the plot. They reveal character. They communicate information the audience needs. How do you do that when your audience may not speak the language of the songs? The solution was elegant. The book scenes provide enough context that when a song arrives, the audience understands the emotion without needing to understand every word. As Ali explained, the music moves you from one point to the other without needing to rely on the lyrics. This is a radical statement about the power of music, the idea that melody, rhythm, and vocal expression can communicate meaning that transcends language entirely. And here is a creative decision that tells you everything about the values of this production. At the curtain call, the band members, the actual musicians, take the last bow, not the actors, the musicians. Because in this show, music is not accompaniment, it is the protagonist. There is a phase in the life of every Broadway show that audiences never see and rarely think about, but which is arguably the most intense and demanding period of the entire process. It is called tech, short for technical rehearsals. And it is where a show that has existed only in rehearsal rooms and on paper finally becomes a living, breathing production in an actual theater. Tech begins with the load-in. For a new Broadway musical, this can take 1 to 2 weeks. Imagine, a completely empty stage must be transformed into a fully functioning world. Set pieces are assembled, lighting rigs are hung, sometimes hundreds of individual instruments, each precisely focused and gelled. Sound equipment is installed, speakers, microphones, mixing boards. Fly systems are rigged, automation is programmed, projections are calibrated. The order is precise. Rigging first, then electrics, then the set itself, then props and costumes. It is a logistical ballet performed by dozens of stagehands, carpenters, electricians, and engineers, many of whom have been building these elements in shops for months. And then comes one of the most magical moments in the entire process, the Sitzprobe. This is a German word. It literally means seated rehearsal, and it refers to the first time the cast sings with the full orchestra. For weeks, the actors have been rehearsing with nothing but a piano. They know their songs, they know their harmonies, but they have never heard what those songs sound like with 25 or 30 musicians playing the full orchestrations beneath them. The Sitzprobe is always emotional. Theater historian John Kenrick calls it always exciting as everyone hears what the score will sound like in performance. I would go further than that. I would say it is often the moment when everyone in the room, cast, orchestra, creative team, realizes for the first time what the show actually is. The orchestrations transform the songs from sketches into paintings. The bass gives the ballads weight. The brass gives the anthems power. The strings give the love songs ache. For a show like Buena Vista Social Club, where the musicians perform on stage and are integral to the storytelling, the Sitzprobe must have been extraordinary. The moment when those iconic Afro-Cuban rhythms filled the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater for the first time, played by musicians who understood that music in their bones. Then comes tech itself, and tech is brutal. Under Actors' Equity rules, when actors are called for 12 hours of technical rehearsal, they can only work 10 of those hours, hence the industry term 10 out of 12. Technicians work even longer, 12 out of 14. These marathon days can last for weeks. What happens during tech? Everything. Lighting intensities are tested. Is this scene too dark? Too bright? Does the audience lose the actor's face in that shadow? Sound cues are programmed. Does the orchestra overwhelm the vocals? Can the audience in the back row hear the whispered confession in Act 2? Set transitions are rehearsed. Can the crew change from the nightclub to the rooftop in 15 seconds without the audience seeing how it happens? Costume changes are timed. Can the lead actress get from her Act 1 finale costume into her Act 2 opening costume in the 45 seconds of scene change music? Playwright Anne Washburn, who spent years observing tech rehearsals before writing a play about them, described it this way: "It's at the same time an incredibly prosaic experience and an incredibly heightened experience. Everybody is just working so incredibly hard to make the thing go. So that becomes very beautiful." And stage manager Amanda Spooner put it even more simply: "That's when all the strings are coming together. That's living." For the outsiders, the technical challenges were extraordinary. Remember that rumble scene? Real rain falling on a stage covered in EPDM rubber. Actors performing choreographed violence while getting soaked, with no music, only the sounds of fists and rain amplified through speakers placed around the entire theater. Sound designer Cody Spencer had to create an immersive soundscape where the only sounds during the rumble were, as the New York Times described it, the train, the rain, and the sonically enhanced punches. That meant speakers positioned throughout the auditorium, not just on stage, so that the audience felt surrounded by the violence. It meant every punch had to be precisely timed to a sound effect. It meant the rain system had to be reliable enough to perform 8 shows a week without flooding the theater or creating unsafe conditions for the performers. And for Moulin Rouge, the technical challenge was the sheer density of the production. Derek McLean's set had moving panels, a functioning windmill, heart-shaped frames that revealed new scenes behind them, and design elements that extended into every corner of the theater. Lighting designer Justin Townsend had to illuminate not just a stage, but an entire transformed venue. The tech period for a show of that complexity is measured not in days, but in weeks. Previews. This is the word that strikes both excitement and terror into the heart of every theater maker. Because previews are when the show meets its ultimate collaborator, the paying audience. A typical Broadway musical has 3 to 6 weeks of previews before opening night. During this period, the show is performed for full houses, audiences who have paid full price for their tickets. But unlike the official run, the show is still changing. The creative team watches every performance, takes notes, and makes adjustments. Songs may be shortened or cut. Scenes may be rewritten. Choreography may be refined. Lighting may be completely redesigned. The days during previews are extraordinarily intense. the cast performs at night, then rehearses changes during the day. The creative team watches the evening performance, meets afterward to discuss what is working and what is not, then implements changes that the cast learns the following morning. It is a cycle of performance, analysis, revision, and rehearsal that continues for weeks. Lincoln Center Theater describes it this way: for new musicals, a great deal of preview effort is expended to make the storytelling clear to the audience. That phrase, "make the storytelling clear," sounds simple, but it encompasses an enormous range of adjustments. Maybe the audience is confused about a character's motivation in the second act. Maybe a song is landing emotionally, but not advancing the plot. Maybe a scene transition is so long that the audience's attention drifts. Maybe a joke that killed in rehearsal dies in front of a real audience. The preview period is also when the social media challenge becomes real. In the golden age of Broadway, a show could work out its problems in relative privacy. Today, audience members post reactions, reviews, and even video clips within minutes of leaving the theater. A show can be praised or condemned on social media before it has even officially opened. This means creative teams must work faster than ever, because word of mouth is forming in real time. The history of Broadway is filled with famous preview stories. The massive turntable in Les Miserables froze during previews. The ship in Titanic refused to sink on cue during an early preview, but the glitch was resolved, and the show went on to win the Tony Award for Best Musical. During previews of Legs Diamond, the producers added a new opening number, and the orchestrations and extra rehearsal time alone cost more than $10,000. In the 1950s, that was a fortune. And then there is the moment every creative team works toward: the freeze. Approximately 1 week before opening night, the show stops changing. The actors need time to settle into the final version. The stage management team needs time to lock in every cue. The show must become consistent and repeatable before critics see it. Jeff Cooperman of The Outsiders described the preview experience beautifully. Sitting through our previews and absorbing the reaction of the audience made me proud to be part of this production. I think it'll stick in so many people's heads as a formative experience and show them what the boundless possibility of theater is. That is what previews reveal. Not just whether the show works, but what the show means. Because a show does not fully exist until it is in conversation with an audience. The audience completes the circuit. They are the final element that transforms a production into an experience. Opening night on Broadway is unlike any other night in the life of a show. The critics are there, the industry is there, the investors are there, the friends and family are there. The energy in the room is electric, a combination of celebration, terror, pride, and exhaustion. For the performers, opening night is the moment when they finally own the show. No more changes, no more notes, no more rehearsing new material in the morning. The show is theirs now, and they will perform it, ideally, for years to come. For the creative team, opening night is both an ending and a beginning. The development process that may have lasted 5 or 10 years is finally complete. But the show's life is just beginning. If it is successful, it will run for years on Broadway, then tour nationally, then open in London's West End, then travel the world. The Outsiders, which I'm proud to be part of as a producer, opened on Broadway in April 2024, won 4 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, recouped its $22 million investment in 20 months, and is now on a North American tour that launched in Tulsa in October 2025, with West End, Asian, and Australian productions planned. Moulin Rouge the musical, which I co-produced, ran for nearly 7 years on Broadway after winning 10 Tony Awards. It played in cities around the world. Buena Vista Social Club, which I co-produced, received 10 Tony nominations and won the Special Tony Award for its extraordinary musicians, a recognition of the creative decision to put live music at the absolute center of the storytelling. But here is what I want you to understand about opening night. It is not the destination, it is a waypoint. The real achievement is not the reviews or the awards or the box office numbers. The real achievement is the process itself, the years of collaboration, experimentation, failure, and breakthrough that transform a spark of an idea into a living, breathing work of art that will be performed by different casts in different cities for decades to come. Every single person who works on a Broadway show, from the lead actor to the stagehand who moves a set piece in the dark, is part of something larger than themselves. They are part of a tradition that stretches back centuries. A tradition of human beings gathering together to tell stories, to make meaning, to create beauty in the face of uncertainty. I want to close this episode with some reflections on what the journey from page to stage teaches us, not just about theater, but about any creative endeavor. First, trust the process, even when it is painful. Development is not linear. Shows do not get steadily better from reading to workshop to tryout to Broadway. They get better, then worse, then better in a different way, then worse again, then suddenly, sometimes in a single rehearsal, they click into place. The willingness to endure that uncertainty, to keep working when the destination is unclear, is what separates the shows that make it from the shows that do not. Second, collaboration is not compromise. The best Broadway shows are not the product of a single vision diluted by committee. They are the product of multiple visions amplified by collaboration. When Danya Taymor says she and the Kuberman brothers share a brain, she is describing something that took years to build, a creative partnership where each person makes the others bolder, not safer. Third, the audience is always right and always a surprise. You can workshop a show for years. You can test every scene, every song, every transition. But you will never fully know what you have until a real audience experiences it. And they will always surprise you. They will laugh at moments you thought were serious. They will weep at moments you thought were transitional. They will tell you, through their collective response, what your show actually is, which may be different from what you thought you were making. Fourth, every detail matters. The difference between a good show and a great show is not one big thing. It is 1,000 small things. The specific granule of EPDM rubber that looks like dirt. The decision to cut a beloved song and replace it with one that gives the character more agency. The choice to keep songs in Spanish because the emotion transcends language. These details accumulate into something that feels inevitable, even though every single one was a choice made by a human being, often at 3 a.m. And fifth, the process is the point. Opening night is wonderful. Awards are gratifying. Long runs are financially rewarding. But the thing that keeps producers, directors, writers, actors, and designers coming back to the theater, the thing that makes this the most addictive art form in the world, is the process itself. The daily miracle of walking into a rehearsal room and making something out of nothing, together. Thank you for joining me on this journey from page to stage. I hope this episode has given you a new appreciation for what goes into the shows you love, and perhaps a new way of watching them. The next time you sit in a Broadway theater and the lights go down and the overture begins, remember, what you are about to experience is the product of years of work by hundreds of people who believed in a story enough to dedicate a chapter of their lives to telling it. That is the magic of Broadway. Not just what happens on stage, but everything that happened to get there. I am Gilad. This has been Curtain Call Conversations. Until next time, stay gold.